Hey everyone, so let's talk about XRP because I know a lot of you are feeling frustrated right now. I get it, I really do. I'm scrolling through my social media just like you are, and wow, the comment section is intense. Now, I'm not saying it's all XRP holders feeling this way, but there's definitely a vocal group that's pretty fired up and impatient. And honestly, I totally understand why. We've been riding this sideways roller coaster for what feels like forever, especially after that massive liquidation event we went through. The past few months have been a wild ride, and let's be real, not all of it has been fun to watch. But here's the thing that's got me scratching my head. XRP actually hit an incredible all-time high of $3.65 back in July, and Bitcoin, it absolutely crushed it with that $126,000 all-time high just about 6 weeks ago. Pretty amazing, right? But you know how it is in crypto. It's that classic, what have you done for me lately mentality. We forget the wins pretty quickly when things get choppy. Now, here's where things get really interesting. And this is why I'm actually super bullish about what's coming next. When I look at the charts and the bigger macro picture, I'm seeing something completely different brewing behind the scenes. And it's got me genuinely excited about how this market cycle is going to wrap up. I've been diving deep into analysis from 9 different XRP chart experts, and folks, what they're saying might surprise you. Sure, a couple of them are warning that we could see XRP dip a bit lower in the short term, but here's the kicker. Not a single one of them is calling this the end of the road for XRP. Not one. In fact, get this, with just one exception, every single analyst I follow is predicting that XRP is about to absolutely explode to the upside. We're talking face-melting, rocket ship kind of price action here. And the best part, almost all of them are calling for double-digit gains. That hasn't changed at all. So where are we right now? XRP is sitting at $2.49, Bitcoin's at $109,694, and the sentiment out there is, well, let's just say it's pretty rough. I came across this fascinating post from Kip Harridge. This guy's the managing partner and founder of Vertical Research Advisory, and he's been in the investing game for literally decades. He's noticing the exact same thing you're probably seeing on your feeds. People are negative, like really negative. But here's what's wild. Almost none of the chart analysts I regularly follow are actually bearish. It's this crazy disconnect between what the experts are seeing and what regular folks are feeling. Kip put it perfectly. He said his timeline is absolutely flooded with people not just predicting a market crash, but practically begging for one. And this is happening while we're sitting at all-time highs, heading into what's historically the best 6-month stretch of the year, with a Trump administration that's doing everything they can
to supercharge the economy and markets heading into 2026 and the midterms. Get this, in his 4 decades of experience, he's never seen bearish sentiment this intense while markets are at all-time highs. Never. And honestly, that's kind of bullish in itself, right? Think about it. If you look at traditional markets, stocks and major indexes are literally hanging out at record highs. And yet, here we are, feeling bearish about everything. Even in crypto, Bitcoin isn't that far off from its $126,000 peak. And XRP? Yeah, it's down from its high, lost about a third of its value, which honestly is just Tuesday in crypto land. But here's something that's absolutely mind-blowing. XRP is chilling above $2 for the first time in its entire 13-year history. Let that sink in for a second. We're living through historic price levels, and somehow we're all doom and gloom about it. The bottom line? Sometimes the best opportunities come when everyone else is feeling the worst. The charts are telling one story, sentiment is telling another, and that gap? That might just be where the magic happens. So XRP is just safely hanging out in this range. And I honestly can't relate to all the complaining I'm seeing about crypto markets right now. I mean, come on people, let's get some perspective here. A year ago, the entire crypto asset class was worth $2.2 trillion. Today, we're sitting at $3.6 trillion. That's massive growth in just 12 months. And somehow, we're all acting like the sky is falling. I saw this great post from Crypto Insight UK that really nailed it. He said it perfectly. It feels so bearish on crypto Twitter. Honestly, I can't believe this is where we are. I get it's not been easy, but it's not doomsday, and it feels like it is. And then he drops this truth bomb about XRP specifically. We've basically been above $2 for a whole year now. Before last November, XRP sat below $2 for 7 long years. 7 years! And now we've been cruising above it for about a year straight. Now, I'll add some context here. He's absolutely right about that timeline. But for most of the last decade, we were actually hanging out around 30 to 40 cents, sometimes even down around 20 cents. That's been my experience with XRP over the years. So when you have that perspective, it's honestly hard to be negative here. I'm genuinely thrilled with where XRP is right now. He continues, I'm not saying I don't want us to go higher. Of course I want us to, and I think we will. That's why I've not sold. However, take a breath and realize that right now we're at $2.50. That's a 5x from the average of the last 7 years. His advice? Perspective, man. Just chill out, everyone. And you know what? He's absolutely right. That's exactly how we should be looking at this. Now, let me share something really interesting from Raoul Pal. For those who don't know, Raoul is the founder and CEO of Real Vision and Global Macro Investor. The guy's a former Goldman Sachs executive, he holds some XRP, and he definitely knows what moves markets. His focus? Liquidity. That's what drives everything, my friends. He shared this fascinating chart and broke it down for us. But first, let me explain a couple of terms he uses because he loves his abbreviations. When he mentions total 2ES, he's talking about a chart that shows the top 125 coins by market cap. But here's the key. It excludes both Bitcoin and stablecoins. The ES stands for excluding stablecoins. He also references the TGA, that's the Treasury General Account, and the PBOC, which is the People's Bank of China. Got it? Cool. So here's what Raoul said. Crypto is driven by liquidity, as you know. For total 2ES to break higher, you need liquidity to make new highs. The government shut down and TGA delayed it. But the everything code is in the process by which debts get monetized, and due to the extension of debts to 5 years, the largest part of the liquidity lies ahead. And folks, this is huge. This is exactly what I've been talking about. This liquidity situation is absolutely core to understanding what's coming next. But here's where it gets really exciting. Raoul says we're going way higher. And this market cycle is going to stretch all the way into 2026. We're talking Q1, maybe even Q2. Now, why is this cycle different? It's not because the fundamentals have changed from previous cycles. It's all about timing. And that timing difference comes down to one thing: debt refinancing. Here's the breakdown. On average, previous cycles ran about 4 years, but the pandemic changed everything. And now we're looking at an average of 5 years. That shift changes when everything happens and completely alters the business cycle metrics. Pretty wild stuff. Then Raoul drops this bomb. The liquidity flood is building, and the government reopening will be the start of a multi-vector liquidity injection from the TGA to the PBOC balance sheet, from bank reserves to the end of quantitative tightening and more. Macro is a long game. You need patience for it to play out. And you know what? He's absolutely spot on. Crypto follows liquidity like clockwork. Right now, we're sitting right in front of what Raoul calls a multi-vector liquidity flood. Sounds pretty fancy, right? But the charts make it crystal clear. When liquidity rises, crypto rises. That's just the facts, my friends. When liquidity stalls, the market gets choppy. Recently, we didn't even see real weakness. What we saw was a pause caused by the government shutdown and the Treasury building up its cash account. But guess what happens when the government reopens? Spending resumes, just like that. And here's another huge piece. Quantitative tightening is almost over. In fact, it officially ends on December 1st. Plus, China is easing up on their policies too. Think about it. When borrowing costs get outrageous like they have been, what always happens? Liquidity injections. There's literally no question about it. The system doesn't have a choice here. Liquidity absolutely must expand from this point forward. And this is exactly why I'm so pumped as an XRP holder. XRP moves big time when liquidity floods into risk assets and utility-driven digital assets like XRP. But here's the kicker. This time around, liquidity isn't coming alone. It's arriving with a crystal clear regulatory environment for XRP, because for the first time in history, the United States is actually pro-crypto. We've got institutional platforms being built left and right, and there's this massive global shift towards tokenization happening. That's not just hype, that's a real massive narrative for 2025, and it's fantastic for XRP. Look, the last time liquidity surged, crypto absolutely ripped. It just did. But this setup is even stronger than what we had before. Now, I'll be real with you. Macro plays out slower than any of us want sometimes. But when that liquidity finally hits, altcoins move fast. Like, really fast. And here's something super important about XRP specifically. It historically lags behind at first, and then it absolutely explodes. XRP isn't doing anything until one day you wake up and suddenly it's doing everything. That's always been the pattern. It's just that explosive phase is usually a small percentage of the overall time. But man, when it happens, it really happens. But think about the logic here. As liquidity increases, people, businesses, and institutions suddenly have way more funds available. And that money has to go somewhere, right? The more money people have, the more likely they are to invest some of it into risk-on assets, like stocks and crypto. And then a certain percentage of that crypto investment, it flows right into XRP. There's absolutely no reason to think this cycle will be any different. Nothing has fundamentally changed here. Nothing is broken. Sure, you could argue that the timing is different this cycle, but the underlying metrics that actually drive that timing, those haven't changed one bit. And that's what really matters at the end of the day. Check this out. I saw this fascinating post from chart analyst Vet about Bitcoin seasonality. He points out that, empirically, November has been the strongest month for Bitcoin since 2010. We're talking about Bitcoin averaging a 38.5% gain in November alone. That's historically the best month for Bitcoin, hands down. And Q4 should be absolutely fantastic, especially with everything I just mentioned. The government reopening, all those liquidity factors kicking in. There's a real solid chance that markets are going to be moving in a very positive direction before this year wraps up. Now, if Raoul Pal's thesis proves correct, we're looking at a potential peak sometime in Q1 or Q2 of 2026. That gives us a lot more runway than most people are expecting. Here's something really interesting from chart analyst CW. He says the accumulation of Bitcoin and ETH is still going incredibly
strong, and it's actually been even stronger recently. The whales are still accumulating like crazy. His take? The rally is being delayed precisely because their accumulation phase hasn't ended yet. But what's crystal clear is that these big players are loading up, and they've been doing it even more aggressively lately. Look at these charts. The Bitcoin inflows are absolutely astronomical. And here's the Ethereum chart, which is huge because historically, when Ethereum kicks off, that's when the entire alt season really gets going. The smart money is positioning themselves right now. So don't be surprised when Ethereum suddenly starts ripping to the upside and the entire altcoin sector just follows along for the ride. When it happens, it's going to be explosive. Chart analyst Mustache makes a great point about this whole situation. He asks, so you think they're giving you 4 months to exit the market? What we're seeing right now is textbook accumulation before the next major leg higher. His advice? Just be patient. And you know what? I brought up this exact point the other day because someone asked me a really smart question. If this is actually the top, How come we're getting several months to exit for the first time in history? Think about it. Normally, when a real top happens, it's the top for a very short period. And then, bam, you see a massive, precipitous drop. But where the hell is that drop? Bitcoin isn't far off from its $126,000 all-time high at all. Why would this time be different if we were really entering a bear market? Honestly, I think it's pretty clear that there's a very low chance we're entering a bear market right now. But here's where things get really exciting. Chart analyst Matthew Hyland shared something mind-blowing about Bitcoin's monthly Bollinger Bands. They've reached the most extreme levels in Bitcoin's entire history. Look at those top and bottom boundaries. They've never been tighter, ever, in Bitcoin's entire existence. Now, this metric doesn't tell us whether the market's going to break upward or downward, but here's what it does tell us. When Bollinger Bands get squeezed this tight, you're about to see a massive move. And this is literally the tightest compression in Bitcoin's entire history. So here's the deal. If the bears are right and we're entering a bear market, when this thing breaks, it's going to absolutely plummet with ridiculous force. But if the bulls are correct, and I think they are, I think it's way more probable, this thing is going straight to the upside. And you know what's crazy? This is the exact same metric we were watching for XRP throughout all of 2024. By the time April rolled around last year, XRP had the tightest Bollinger Bands in its entire history. And then, for the next 4, 5, 6 months, they just kept getting even tighter. I kept reporting on this throughout the year. I was like, guys, look, I don't pretend to know exactly when XRP is going to break, but when it
does, it's going to be with absolutely ridiculous force. And I was betting throughout 2024 that when it finally ripped, it would be to the upside, because we were in a bull market. Well, guess what? Today, we're still in a bull market. So when this goes, capital is going to rotate just like it always does. Bitcoin is going to find its peak. Probably that final parabolic move, if history rhymes with itself. And then people will take profits and rotate into coins like XRP. Same pattern we see every single time. Check out this post from chart analyst Simca. He's addressing the XRP community directly, and he says, "This one is for the XRP community where I see some gurus preaching for the end of the cycle. Bros, it is hard to see this range as anything less than a long reaccumulation after November's surge." He's talking about last November, of course. In Elliott wave terms, he's calling this an ABC pattern, with a sharp ending in the C wave, which is very common. He calls it the last shakeout, or spring. Here's what's fascinating. He shows a comparison chart with gold from years ago, and says there's basically no difference between that reaccumulation pattern and what XRP is doing right now. His advice? Thank me later. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's proven correct. Now, here's Chart Nerd with some serious conviction. He's calling this XRP vertical accumulation, and he hasn't changed his targets at all. He says we're in an uptrend with vertical accumulation support, and he's insisting we're going to see higher prices sooner rather than later. Get this, he thinks there's a very serious chance that XRP is going to peak somewhere around $27 this market cycle. That's what he's insisting is likely to occur. And despite all this recent sideways action and negative sentiment, he's not backing down from that prediction one bit. Here's something really cool from chart analyst Javon Marks. He's looking at the XRP BTC chart, and he says his quoted tweet showcases a successful prediction of XRP outrunning Bitcoin by over 243%. Just to give you some context, this was from December 8th of last year. During that period, XRP's price increased by over 570%, going from 49 cents all the way up to $3.35. But here's where it gets really exciting. Today, he's showing the potential for XRP to outrun Bitcoin by over 600% this time. This could result in XRP's price increasing drastically. And you know what? There's solid historical precedent for this. XRP typically gets one major move to the upside that can last for a bit. That's considered one move. Then you accumulate, and then you get that final burst, that final leg up, which we haven't had this market cycle yet. Here's the kicker. That final move is historically bigger than the first one. So if you're looking at XRP increasing by about $3 during that first leg, it's not crazy to think it could be some multiple of that for the final move. That's exactly why analysts are predicting
double-digit price action for XRP.
Now, I don't make price predictions myself. I don't pretend to know if they're correct. But based on history, it's definitely not crazy to speculate about. History has shown us what's possible, and there's going to be so much money flowing around by the time we get into that euphoric part of alt season. It's not crazy at all. Here's a post from chart analyst Steph is Crypto. He says, XRP is flipping the previous bull market peak into support. Is that bullish? The answer is absolutely yes. And you can see exactly what he's talking about in this chart. What used to be resistance from the last cycle, XRP peaked at $2 last market cycle, is now solid support. We're safely sitting above that previous high. And that's exactly the point. The support has held strong throughout this whole period. Sure, we had that crazy scam wick on October 10th when we saw the biggest liquidation event in crypto history. But outside of that brief moment, and I mean brief, like it was down for what, a minute? We've been safely hanging out above that level. Of course that's bullish. Here's an update from Chad Ventures on the XRP monthly chart. He says we've back-tested lower Fibonacci supports, leaving behind a large wick. It's still hovering below the 1.272 log Fibonacci level, which is the crucial level to break through in order to potentially enable much higher prices. He also notes that the price is sitting right at the monthly 10 EMA, that's the blue line, which has been strong support in the past. He's closely monitoring that 10 EMA support level. Key takeaway here? It's not huge news. We're just ranging. But the point is, there's absolutely nothing weird, bad, or broken about what's happening. That's just a technical way of saying we're basically consolidating. Nothing is destroyed here. Now, like I mentioned at the start of this video, there are some analysts who think we could go lower. Chart analyst Natalie Martinez is one of them. He says, XRP showing signs of weakness. A retest of $2.25 might be next. He posted that this morning. Look, if the whole market dumps, that's totally plausible. I just would be surprised if XRP tanks by itself. Wouldn't you? Here's something interesting from chart analyst CW. If XRP rises to $2.60, most high-leverage short positions will be liquidated. Well, that would be nice. I honestly can't imagine betting against XRP at this point. It's just going to keep trending upward as time passes. But hey, you do you. People are just going to keep getting wrecked shorting this thing. And then there's this fascinating post from chart analyst Greg Crypto. I won't read the whole thing for the sake of time, but here's the key takeaway. He cites a crucial level and says as long as price doesn't close below $2.08, every other indicator out there is either lying or lagging. His price targets? Conservative target at $13. Somewhere in the middle would be more like $22. And if he's being optimistic, around $35 per XRP this market cycle. Again, I don't know if we're going to see XRP reach those heights this cycle, but that's not crazy talk at all. It's totally reasonable to speculate that might happen. And I can see why so many analysts keep throwing out these kinds of numbers. You see moves like that in crypto all the time. And XRP has been artificially suppressed for so long, it's really not surprising that it's been catching up over the last year. And honestly, I don't think it's done yet. So yeah, XRP might feel stuck to some people, but I'm pretty damn thrilled with it. That's genuinely my perspective. Is it stuck? No, not really. Sure, the market's moving sideways. I guess you could say stuck in that sense, but it's not like there's something bad or wrong happening here. We're just ranging, experiencing a bit of chop, which is very normal in crypto. But here's the thing, we're in a bull market, so we're not going to stay in this range for that long. All right, everyone, I'll wrap it up there. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Are you feeling as optimistic about XRP as I am? Or are you in that impatient camp? I'd love to hear your thoughts.